car crashes, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis, Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts with the attorneys of Hollis, Wright.
Hello, you're watching The Attorneys. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Art Franklin. Our topic, what happens when criminal charges impact divorce, custody, or domestic relations? We'll unpack that and a whole lot more. But as we get started, we'd like to remind you that there are attorneys at Hollis Wright standing by right now to take your call. It's simple. Just dial 1-844-LAW-TALK, 1-844-LAW-TALK, and that call is free and it is confidential, so go ahead and do that right now. But Carter, we've got a lot to unpack on a great show lined up.
Yeah, absolutely. We're really going to be talking about household-related crimes tonight. And what does that mean exactly? Well, what we're going to be talking about is that unfortunately we have a lot of individuals and families out there that are caught up in abusive situations, whether it be spousal abuse, child abuse, maybe even elder abuse if you've got a grandchild taking advantage of a grandparent. And so we're really going to unpack that, and we're going to look at the laws in Alabama that relate to those types of situations and the crimes that can arise from those situations, and really also what individuals in that type of environment should do to protect themselves and to exercise the rights that they have to protect themselves or their children. And I can think of no better person to provide us the insight on this topic than Brett Bloomston, who's a good friend of mine and a good friend of our firm. So Brett, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here. First and foremost, I have a tremendous amount of respect for your firm and the great work that they do representing injured folks throughout the state. And again, my pleasure to be here.
Well, that's kind of you to say. So kind of a jumping off point, why don't you describe to the viewers just a little bit about the nature of your law practice and how it relates to the topic tonight?
Sure. I have been doing criminal defense work for almost 30 years, 29 years this year, which is a long time to do anything. But my practice ranges from misdemeanor cases in city court all the way to federal cases involving white-collar crime and sometimes even violent crimes.
Yeah. So obviously a part of your practice relates to getting involved in situations where either a child is being abused and a parent is being criminally prosecuted, and maybe even a grandparent is being abused in some capacity, and somebody is getting criminally charged. And are you usually coming in on the side of defending the person who has been charged with some type of crime in a household environment?
Sure. My bread and butter is criminal defense work. However, I've consulted with folks before who just simply needed hand-holding victims of crimes, and I know the system pretty well from being on the defense side of it. So, you know, if I'm called upon by a friend, colleague, family member, oftentimes my law partner and other domestic relations attorneys will contact me for consultation and to help them navigate through the system when it comes to any domestic violence, sexual abuse, involving their case.
Yeah, and Art, one of the things I like to preface a show like this on is that Brett serves a very useful role in society in terms of defending individuals charged with crimes. And it's not just a circumstance where somebody's trying to get somebody off of a crime that they committed. Oftentimes, and I think, Brett, you would agree with this, it's not necessarily a matter of guilt or innocence as much as it is a matter of the degree to which they're being charged and the punishment that they are potentially facing, because a lot of times the individuals, they've committed the act. The question is that how bad is the act under the law and how bad should they be punished for it? And a lot of times your time is spent sort of negotiating that and trying to figure out to have them charged in a way that is reasonable for the crime and have them serve a sentence that is reasonable for what they committed. So it's not always about just guilt and innocence. Is that fair?
In essence, you just discussed all the plates that I spin on a daily basis. Along those lines, it is not infrequent that I get contacted by a spouse who is going through a divorce or domestic situation, and there are allegations of either child abuse or sexual abuse that are alleged. Frankly, in my practice, I've defended a number of folks that I was convinced were not guilty and was able to successfully represent them in situations where their spouse or soon-to-be ex-spouse were using those allegations to further their, whether it's custody or financial situation in a divorce or domestic situation. So those are very problematic cases because allegations of sexual abuse from one parent to a child, it's a game changer when you're in the middle of a divorce and those allegations are made. Such heightened scrutiny and potential felony convictions, sex offender registration, the list goes on and on. So I have defended a number of folks that were just alleged to have done things that they clearly didn't.
Yeah. Now, one of the conflicts that can arise in a household environment, whether the couple is separated or going through a divorce, if you've got some level of spousal abuse going on, I know one of the concepts or topics we want to talk about tonight is protection from abuse.
Yes.
Talk about that process and how it plays a part in what you do and why we have what we, I guess, a process to have somebody protected from abuse.
So a protected from abuse is a civil proceeding. It is something where one party, if there is a domestic relationship, so either a boyfriend, girlfriend, husband, wife, or former, those are the only parties that can file a protection from abuse. And effectively, it's a restraining order, and it keeps people from contact through any means, email, phone calls, personal contact. In fact, some prescribe distances that you can order someone to stay away. So those protection from abuse are a civil matter. A judge can issue an ex parte order, and that means that the protection from abuse goes into effect. And if the other party violates that protection from abuse by contacting, then a criminal charge could come out of it. And that's how that process works. Oftentimes those PFAs or protection from abuses are what I consider a three-headed dog. That's from Greek mythology, by the way. I didn't make that up. There is a protection from abuse, there is a criminal charge of domestic violence, and there's a pending divorce matter. And oftentimes those three are in the same, or they're on the same dog, but parallel tracks.
So are the protection from abuse petitions or motions or complaints, are those filed in the family court where you would also bring a divorce proceeding?
So that's a good logistical question. You file the protection from abuse in family court. If there is a companion case of a divorce, that would be in the domestic relations court. But oftentimes the domestic relations court will reach in and grab that protection from abuse and incorporate it into the domestic relations or divorce matter. Okay. It may leave a criminal charge of domestic violence hanging out there, but there's a lot of interplay between those three.
But if I'm understanding you correctly, and I think this is important for the viewer to understand, the protection from abuse process and motion, that is not something that is filed or pursued by the district attorney's office related to potential criminal charges. They have to actually go out and hire or retain their own private attorney to make that petition and get that order to protect them from abuse?
So yes, you are correct. Other than anyone can file a protection from abuse, you don't have to have a lawyer to help you with that. You can fill out the paperwork, you swear to your answers on the paperwork, and if a judge looks at it and determines that there's a serious issue of threat or violence, et cetera, they'll sign off on those.
Yeah. Let's go to commercial break. Just scratching the surface on this topic, so can't wait to continue the discussion.
Yeah, actually, I want to also talk about when we get back is the very beginning. You get a call from police and they say, we want to talk to you. And what do you really need to do at that point? Because there's so much to still unpack in a situation like this one. But we're just getting started, as you heard from Carter. We got attorneys standing by right now at 1-844-LAW-TALK. 1-844-LAW-TALK. You can reach someone from Hollis, Wright for a free call, and it is confidential. Stay with us. We'll continue this discussion on the other side of the break.
Here's some good information from our firm to you. Hollis Wright recently launched the Law Talk podcast. With podcasts becoming so popular, this will be a simple way to provide our loyal viewers with more opportunities to access information about important legal topics and to learn more about our firm and how we can help you if the need ever arises. There are many ways to access the Law Talk podcast. You can simply scan the QR code on your screen. Also, episodes are always available on the Hollis Wright YouTube channel, as well as on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you consume your podcasts. Just search up Hollis Wright in the Law Talk podcast. Don't wait, take advantage and listen today. Thanks for watching The Attorneys, and we know you'll enjoy the Law Talk podcast.
The Attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you.
When we started the show in 2011, my goal was to do what our firm does best. Help people answer questions related to real-world legal issues they have in their lives in a way that's not intimidating to talk with a lawyer. If the issue is important to you, it's equally important to us, and we're ready to talk with you at no cost.
Yeah, oftentimes people are confronting various legal issues in their lives that really run the gamut of a lot of different legal practice areas, such as bankruptcy, criminal law, civil law, such as personal injury, divorces, domestic relations. And to be able to have a show once a week that covers those practice areas and answers people's questions in those areas, that's really the main objective of the show.
We use the resources of the many lawyers at our law firm to create a plan that has a lasting impact for each person that calls or texts. And we also give back to the community at the same time. We are here to serve you, the viewer, each week on The Attorneys.
Addiction kills hope.
But at Bradford, it all changes here.
Experience the difference
that proven treatment can make.
Find recovery. Find community.
At Bradford.
And welcome back. You are watching The Attorneys. I want to remind you that you can follow Hollis Wright on all the social media platforms, whether it's on Facebook, it's on Instagram, or X, formerly known as Twitter, also on YouTube. You can get some great information there, a lot of good resources as well as we continue this discussion. I know we're just getting started, much more to unpack.
Yeah, and you had a great point right before we went to break about what an alarming situation a person can find themselves in if they're going through a divorce, and then all of a sudden through those proceedings the husband or father finds out that the spouse is accusing them of some type of child or sex abuse. If that happens and the police are knocking on the door, what advice do you have for somebody who finds themselves in that position?
Truly an alarming situation. When you're rocking along and think that you're going to have a separation from your spouse or divorce, and these allegations are hurled out there, first, law enforcement takes them very seriously. These allegations are always dealing with interviews with mental health professionals, law enforcement. But the initial contact, if an officer were to contact a individual with those allegations, my advice always is to politely and respectfully get their contact information, tell them that you'd like to have time to consult with an attorney. That's a pretty standard thing in our world. I have a very good relationship with the law enforcement that I work with and or against. A man of his word, you have a rapport, and if I contact an officer and say, I need to talk to my client, I'll get back to you, and I always do. So sometimes a statement is in someone's best interest, but oftentimes law enforcement can spin things, and especially if they've been told this guy is a molester or this guy is an abuser, the supposition from law enforcement is that there's something to that.
Yeah, I want to circle back to something that we touched upon, but I want to make sure that we don't just completely gloss over it, because I think it's particularly important, and that is the violation of a protection from abuse order. You mentioned earlier that criminal charges can actually arise from a violation of the order. So if somebody's confronted with some type of physical abuse charge that they've been charged with, a protection from abuse order gets entered, they violate the PFA, now they're looking at additional criminal charges?
That's correct. In that scenario that you described, there would be parallel prosecutions, one for the civil protection from abuse, the other from a domestic violence, for example. If someone violates the PFA by having contact or anything forbidden in that order, not only could they be charged for a criminal violation of the PFA, it also would violate a condition of their bond. If someone is charged with a domestic violence charge, there is a condition of their bond that there is no further contact, which is often an issue as well.
And these protections from abuse, they don't just apply from one spouse to another, they also apply to children. Like one parent could get a protection from abuse order related to a child.
Absolutely. There are literal boxes to check on there to keep folks away from their own children.
Well, let's talk a little bit about the child abuse situation, unfortunately, that does go on. And I was kind of struck or intrigued by sort of the different types of abuse that may arise. Of course, we all know about the physical abuse that could cause crimes or criminal charges to be brought. But there are other circumstances beyond just the actual direct physical abuse. Like one of the aspects here is abandonment of a child. Speak about that for a minute. What does that entail?
Frankly, it's not a frequently charged matter. However, recently I saw a Blount County case where a woman was charged with child abuse for leaving her children home alone for hours. Now, typically, child abuse deals with willful abuse or cruel treatment of a child. It is a fine line to be determined whether corporal punishment, for example, spanking your child, does it cross over if it leaves a mark on the child, something along those lines. I was raised with corporal punishment. I'm the youngest of 5 boys. I tease that if they were prosecuted as they were or as they are now, then my mother would be in the penitentiary.
Yeah.
However, she raised 5 good boys.
Absolutely. Endangering the welfare of a child, what does that crime involve?
So endangerment of a child, we see most frequently with chemical endangerment of a child. That is a prosecution throughout the state that I've seen kind of pick up some speed. So if law enforcement affects an arrest warrant or a search warrant and they find narcotics, any drugs, oftentimes the parent can be charged with endangerment of a child if there are children in the home. You've also probably seen the cases where an infant tests positive for narcotics. Those folks are typically charged, the mothers are typically charged with chemical endangerment because they were obviously ingesting drugs while they were pregnant.
I know this is a little bit outside the realm of like defending individuals who have had charges brought against them, but I want to ask you, like, what do you recommend to parents or to individuals in the neighborhood that they believe that there is some type of abuse taking place in the household? What should they do, and sort of what signs or indications should they look for? Because I could see some neighbors are like, well, yeah, that might be kind of crossing the line, but I'm not going to go to the police about it. Where does that line sit?
That is a very difficult question to answer. Folks have to use their judgment. We've likely all witnessed something that we thought went over the line when it came to punishment of a child. If it becomes a pattern, or if you see that child is withdrawn or no longer around and there's a legitimate concern, just because I do criminal defense work, don't misunderstand that I want to protect children.
Yeah. You can't divorce yourself from that aspect of it.
Especially being a father.
Yeah.
No child should be abused physically, sexually. And like you had mentioned earlier, if someone is charged with that type of offense and they are guilty of it, there needs to be consequences. And part of my job is to mitigate those consequences and to make sure that the punishment fits the crime.
All right. Well, we've got still another segment to go.
Yeah.
I know we're running through quite a bit here. We want to thank you for joining us here. Also want to remind you, you still have time. All you got to do is call 1-844-LAW-TALK. You can reach an attorney at Hollis, Wright for a free confidential call right now. We're going to wrap things up when we come back. Stay with us. We'll be back in a moment.
Thank you for watching The Attorneys each Sunday night, where we come to your living room to provide free legal advice in a confidential, off-air setting. Unfortunately, with the number of calls, texts, and emails that come in during the show, we can't always get to everything. But know this, Hollis Wright is open all week long. You call us at 844-LAW-TALK and we're going to answer your question for free. Thank you for watching The Attorneys, and we look forward to seeing you and talking to you soon.
If this place could talk, it wouldn't. It would sing and celebrate all of our stories of addiction recovery, victory, and community. This is Bradford Health Services. It all changes here.
Welcome back. You are watching The Attorneys. I want to remind you that there are so many ways that you can get in contact with Hollis Wright. There's a QR code on the screen. If you scan that QR code, you can reach someone there as well. Also want to remind you that throughout the show, you'll see information scrolling on the screen as well. We like to make sure that you have resources and information about the topics that we're discussing. So go ahead and check that out as we continue to give you that as well. Brett has really just been breaking it all down for us here.
Yeah, absolutely. And in the balance of our time, I want to talk about crimes related to harassment, because I know that that's a big topic that parents are concerned about relative to their teenage children, and even with respect to adult on adult or spouse on a spouse who are going through difficult situations, getting involved in harassment situations. So are there crimes in Alabama related to some form of harassment?
Sure, there are many of them. Harassment in and of itself encompasses harassing communications, online harassment, which is obviously a very hot topic these days, and we do see a tremendous uptick in the amount of prosecutions for uncivil discourse on the social media platforms, we'll just put it that way. We do see a number of those cases. Harassment in itself is contacting someone with no real intent to have any dialogue with them. It's to harass, to annoy, or to alarm someone. Sometimes that can be saying verbal threats or ugly things, or it could simply be the frequency of contact. If someone were emailing you every 5 minutes or texting you every minute, that could rise to the level of harassment. But again, we've seen a tremendous number of cases in the social media aspect.
What are you seeing in that regard? Is it random people harassing strangers? Is it more boyfriend, girlfriend broke up? Is it more spouses having conflicts and separated?
The cases that have come through my office are typically folks that know each other and have a beef. And instead of having civil discourse and talking about it, they air out the dirty laundry on social media.
Yeah.
The cases that are prosecuted for harassment, such through Facebook, et cetera, I think they're difficult for the state or the cities to prosecute because you have to prove that it was intended to be seen by the recipient. And if I just were to post something on my page that Hollis Wright is the worst law firm on the planet, of course I wouldn't do that. It wouldn't be actionable because I'm not directing it at Hollis Wright or an individual. I'm just throwing my opinion out there, and folks do have the First Amendment right to freedom of speech.
Yeah, can't harassment cross the line though to be frightening for someone?
Certainly. If there are threats, if there are legitimate threats, which again through my office this week I've dealt with that and advised a client to get a PFA against a former spouse because the threats were very graphic and very violent. So certainly they do cross over quite a bit.
Yeah, and what's interesting about it is historically you'd have to either go to somebody's house or pick up the landline telephone to harass them. Now, with the advent of all the technology that we have and the iPhones, it just makes this kind of conduct so much easier, and it can be 24/7.
No question, that's an excellent point. With keyboard warriors, you don't have to have a lot of backbone or a lot of guts to confront somebody.
Yeah.
You can do it with a couple of clicks and say your piece. it would take a lot more to have that face-to-face conversation. You're absolutely right.
In terms of the actual communication, are you typically seeing it, is it text messaging, is it Snapchatting, is it Facebook, Instagram, Messenger, direct, is it all of the above?
All of the above.
Whatever they can utilize?
Exactly. As social media evolves and changes, and there's so many outlets, I've got cases in my office dealing with harassment with Facebook. Snapchat, not so much, because that Snapchat,
it disappears.
It's supposed to disappear unless someone is wise enough to take a screenshot of it. But we see it throughout all sectors of social media.
Yeah. What types of punishment, what types of sentences can people be facing if they engage in this type of conduct?
Typically the harassing communications, whether it be through phone calls or text messages, those are typically misdemeanor charges. Most folks that are charged with something like that don't have criminal records, and typically if there's a cooling off period, a judge may say, well, there hadn't been any further problems between the two. They've learned a valuable lesson. They got charged with a crime. So, they're typically not thrown in jail over these type allegations.
Where does the law sort of have a dividing line between what I would characterize as maybe bullying that could be handled or should be handled at the school level or parental level? Where does it tip over to harassment? Because it would seem like that would be a very difficult determination to make, where you've got somebody that's 15, 16, 17 years old in that regard.
My experience is that law enforcement exercises a good bit of discretion when it comes to kids harassing each other, because frankly, we didn't have social media growing up, but we harassed each other.
Yeah,
that's part of being a kid. So with every 8-year-old with an iPhone in their hand, if law enforcement prosecuted all of those harassment cases, that's all that family court would ever have. So it has to rise to a level of legitimate threats. We've seen post-Columbine any hit list or anything that is concerning about potential violence, those take immediate action, and law enforcement is usually pretty quick.
Just brief comment on harassment of teachers and coaches at the school level by the actual students. Do you see that?
There is a relatively new law in Alabama that increased punishment for those who have harassed officials. So we see on the baseball field and on the football field, coaches getting harassed. We see the officials getting harassed for making the bad call. And there are enhanced punishments. I've gotten that phone call before.
Wow.
They're certainly prosecuted.
Well, Brett, thanks so much for being here. Just a tremendous amount of information. We didn't even scratch the surface, I feel like, but we'll get you back on again.
Sounds great. Thank you. Art, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Brett. Gentlemen, thank you very much. And thank you as well for joining us on another episode of The Attorneys. And you know where to find us. We'll be back once again next week, same place, same time, new topic, but good information always coming to you from Hollis, Wright. We'll see you then.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis, Wright.